to another 80s golden age of comedy. You know, it just keeps getting more and more exciting. I know I'm starting to hear back from people that are watching the show. By the way, I'm your host, Bruce Starr. And how did I get into this? In 1980, I started hanging around the Improv on Melrose Avenue in Hollywood. And it just started by me just being around there, hanging around with some of the comedians, becoming roommates with a guy named Barry Martyr who was writing for everybody, and him saying to me, man, why don't you book these comedians? Evening at the Improv is exploding all over the country. The agents don't want to waste their time getting them small time gigs, and they don't want to call. Why don't you call for them? You like them, they like you, they trust you. And at first I said no, because I don't want to be an agent. And I said, everybody hates their agent. So I don't want to be an agent.
Funny. That's funny.
Barry Martyr said to me, just do it, man. Put money in your pocket, put money in their pocket, and give them a reason to talk to you rather than just hello. And when I heard that, it kind of opened up my eyes and opened up the doors for me to do something I really wasn't sure I wanted to do. I really wanted to be a personal manager. But that did happen, but not for a while, and not really with too many of the comedians. So I am thrilled to have on one of the funniest guys in the country. And you don't have to believe me, because he is an award winner. And after I introduce Steve Mittleman, he's going to tell us all about where and what he did in this incredible show business. So Steve Mittleman, welcome to 80s Golden Age of Comedy. Woohoo!
Beautiful. We love you. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for inviting me, Bruce. And that's it. Good night.
Yeah, show's over. That was good. Thank you.
Right. You had a great intro, and how can I top that? And well, the 80s, that's the subject but honestly, it started way back before this. You prep me on what you want me to talk about, but I got into comedy when I was 5, 6, 7 years old.
Wow.
When I was, we lived in Glen Oaks. We moved from Montreal. My parents moved when I was a year old, and we moved to Queens. We grew up in New York, so where we lived, my mom would watch The Tonight Show, and I would watch her watching The Tonight Show. I was maybe, 7 or 8. And they thought I was asleep, but I wasn't. And simply, I'd watch her laughing at Johnny, and I had a very dark childhood, but laughter was the escape. Laughter was the escape. My parents were, I don't want to start off on a heavy tone, but you wanted me to talk about the struggle. My parents were like the Costanzas. They were a typical New York Jewish couple that would just scream at each other, but they would also scream at their kids. So that was not the good part. And I was a very sensitive child, and comedy was my escape. Comedy was a way of saying the irony of how life was. It was very dark, very dark. My rageaholic, both parents, and not great, especially my dad. So to see The Tonight Show and Johnny Carson and the laughter, it was really great. I had a brother and a sister who I loved to bits then and love to bits now, and that makes things a lot easier. It made things a little easier back then, but back then your parents are everything. You don't realize how important your siblings are, but your parents, they had a great influence on my emotional state, which wasn't great. So I love sports, but I wasn't good at sports. I was a lanky kid, but I loved playing sports, and that was a great escape. My friends were a great escape. And then we moved to a place called Rochdale Village, again in Queens. And from my bedroom that I had with my brother, I guess he would fall asleep. I can't even remember where he was, but you could just see through the hallway. You could see like this much of the Zenith TV. And there was my mom watching the Tonight Show, and maybe my sister, who was a few years older than I am, and still the same amount of years. Anyway, after all these years, so I would look and see the Tonight Show, and I said, "Oh man, I'd love to do that," you know. But I didn't know how. But we had all the classic, Nichols and May album, and the of everybody had Alan Sherman, you
Yeah.
know, and Bob Newhart and Von Meter. So we had some albums. Nichols and May, maybe the best of all time. I don't know, but so I my voice in my teens, it was like that. I didn't, it was like really bad. But I went in high school. I went to a special class, and my voice came out like this. So I want to be a disc jockey. I took over one, loving stand-up. I still love stand-up then, but I went, hey, I want to be a disc jockey, and went to school for that. And I just segued into comedy. Comedy was my backup plan, but it was like a neck and neck. Loved it, and that's it was a very heavy childhood. My first therapy session, when I was maybe 22 years old, 23 years old, at the end of the session, the therapist hugged me. I don't remember ever hugging anybody in my life till that second.
Wow.
So, yeah, so it wasn't the most, you know, I just want to not wrap up about my parents, but as I got older, I gave them a total pass on my childhood, which I don't know if many people actually do that, but I'll tell you why. Because I didn't live through the the depression. You know, my parents, my grandfather lost a fortune in Canada in the depression. My dad's dad passed away when he was 13, and he had to work when he was 13, and then they had to witness to some degree the Holocaust. And somewhere in my smart, sympathetic mind, I said, well, I give them a total pass. They were not nice to me. They were not, a lot of people were, beaten as kids and screamed at as kids. And I think there was a lot of residual effect from those two events that happened in the late 20s, and it bled into the 30s, and it bled into the Holocaust. And I don't know what I would have been like. I might have been just like them. So I'm giving myself credit to go, hey, look, I'm looking at what their life was like, how it changed dramatically, how life in general changed. And they didn't have therapy, right? They didn't have the help of, it wasn't part of their generation to do that. They didn't know how to do that. I did, and it helped me immensely.
Stephen, a common theme that I'm seeing, especially from the New York comics,
Yeah.
especially from the Queens comics, it's really interesting. Two things that I hear time and time again, because I've done over 40 interviews here now. So the one thing I've seen and heard was them peeking through and watching Johnny Carson.
Wow, that's
Okay,
great. Yeah.
almost every other person has said this.
Wow.
And most of them would say they would wait even for the end of the show when the comedians would come on, and they
Yeah.
were glued to that area in between the wood posts looking
That's
downstairs, right?
That's funny. Well, we did watch the, Ed Sullivan, so that was, there you go. Anyway, that's great to hear. you gotta wonder, it comes from somewhere.
Absolutely. And the second thing that's a little more psychological is many times, unless a person has a strong, difficult childhood
Yeah,
background, they have something missing that they will need later when they have to contend with how difficult it is to become a successful stand-up. If they're used to the good days, if they're been loved, and I was kind of like that. You're used to the good, used to being loved, used to life being fairly okay and easy. When it gets tough,
yeah.
some people would run, but not the ones that had difficult childhoods because they were more aligned with that, and it just pushed them forward.
Well, I'll tell you, I definitely, what drove me into therapy was once I got a taste of the hug from the audience. I call it emotional calories.
Wow.
Emotional calories that I was lacking. You know, that once I got a taste of the hug from the audience, uh, and then I couldn't get on stage regularly. I started getting anxiety attacks, which I never had before. And what happened was it drove me to therapy. You know, it was like, oh my God, I couldn't deal with the fact that I wasn't getting that hug regularly. You know, I mean, I paid my dues. I mean, I literally paid my dues, crazy amount of dues to get on stage. So,
Tell us more about that, because that's a very interesting part. Tell us your first experience
yeah.
when you went on stage. What was that like? Whether it was junior high school, and how that worked.
Well, I'll tell you, the, the first time I ever performed, well, somehow because I knew I wanted to go into radio, I talked the school, I don't know, principal, assistant principal, and I would do the announcements that went, you know, like your homeroom announcements, and you saw the speaker, the two
Oh yeah.
giant speakers in the homeroom.
Oh yeah.
Uh, Good afternoon, students, and you know, I got to use my new voice, and so that was fun. So that was maybe the first time I ever did anything publicly, and it was kind of safe. Talking about wanting to be a disc jockey because nobody could see you doing it. It was
Exactly.
safe.
That's very different, as we know, from getting up just you
Oh
on
my,
that stage.
oh my God. When I was so good, I was a decent writer, and I went to Baruch, which is they called it UCLA in New York, Bernard Baruch College, and it was UCLA was University at the corner of Lexington Avenue. Okay, uh, so I went there and I had a speech class, and I was such a bad student. I never claimed to be a good student, but I was creative, and I could literally write my speech for class on the way to class. So I remember writing something and doing it and getting like a B plus. You know, I was like that good, that fast. So that was maybe the first time I was doing something in front of people. And then I transferred to another school, which was had a focus in radio and communications and broadcasting. And the final project there it was an oral interpretation class, speech class. And like, it was do whatever you like, open, you know. And I said, well, I'm going to do stand up. And I killed.
How many minutes did they give you?
Like 5 minutes, you know, what people had to do whatever. I mean, you had a whole class of people doing things. So, but I remember compiling ideas for stand up on a legal pad. Here's yet one more, you know, that fill up these pads. Um, and so what happened is they knew me and already liked me or loved me, my classmates. So I was up all night. I was running jokes by my roommates, and I killed. I did great
Wow.
the first time stand
Wow.
up. And then that next summer, I started auditioning at the clubs in New York in 76.
How old were you?
20, 20. I would go to the improv and get in there, even when I was like 17 and 18. I was tall. I'm 6'4", so I was tall then. And, well, there's a joke of mine, 6'4", I got my height from my parents. Mom's 3'2", dad's 3'2". So anyway, I would go and watch, and I loved watching, like Elaine Boozler and Bob Shaw and Ed Bluestone and Glenn Super. And, it was an amazing thing. Andy Kaufman a bit. It was an amazing time. So, but I went back to school in the fall of 76, and I was then transferred now to University of Buffalo. And I just missed stand up so much. I wanted to give up school and go back to stand up after just auditioning in the clubs,
Wow.
like the three major clubs where the improv, that was the first time ever on stage in New York on a Sunday night.
Wow.
At the improv. And then Catch Rising Star, audition at all these places on 77th Street and First Avenue, and then the comic strip on 81st, between 81st and 82nd on 2nd Avenue. So, yeah, anyway, but I went back to school. I maybe had done 10 shows. And
but Stephen, did you go through that waiting on? I heard you did. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah. Oh,
That
yeah.
line down the street, waiting just for your number.
Yes. And then Judy liked me, Judy Orbach, who was the person at the improv. So, let's say if there were 30 auditioners or 40 auditioners, and I picked number 29 or whatever, she goes, throw it back in, pick another one. She wanted me to get a better spot, And so the amount of characters were insane that were there.
Tell me about that line. Who else was on that line with you?
Well, Paul Provenza, we became good friends from that second on. Paul Provenza, a guy named Richie Gold, who I don't know if you know Richie, who's, we're all old friends. He's an old friend of Bruce Smirnoff's and Billy Rebacks and John DeBellis, Mark Schiff.
Wow.
Sort of like the regular, but they put him on Sundays, but he wasn't auditioning, but they would throw him on a Sunday. And we it's like I have these lifetime friends just from waiting online, and yeah, take the train or two from Queens. My parents were now in Flushing.
The E or the F or both?
Both.
Okay.
The 7 train. I had to go from the
7. Oh, okay.
To the 7, and get off. And then it was a time of Son of Sam. So it literally, even though he wasn't looking to shoot me, but he was like, everybody was terrified of Son of Sam. And I would run home at like 2 a.m. from the subway to my parents' new apartment in Flushing. But I went back to school. I got a good taste of it and I missed it. And I wanted to quit school. But University of Buffalo was such a liberal school that they let me. I said, listen, can I do a 12-credit independent study class called stand-up comedy, an independent study?
Wow.
And they let me do it. Now, my dad had a stroke, and because I was his, I was his dependent, even though I was paying my way through college, I was his dependent. And as long as I had 12 credits of college credits, I would get like $150 a month from Social Security. So literally, I got a professor to agree to be my professor in a class called stand-up comedy. And it was 12 credit class. So I got literally December 15th was the end of the fall winter term at University of Buffalo. December 16th, I was now committed to doing stand-up. And I never went back to Buffalo, but I did it long distance. I wrote and mailed in my material, and I got my material graded from this professor. God bless him. And that's how liberal a school it was. But I got like so I wasn't like a starving artist, but you can only just live so much on 150 a month. But I crashed at my sister's apartment on 89th Street and Second Avenue.
Okay.
So it was only 10 or so blocks, not even from the comic strip, like 12, 13 blocks from the Catch Rising Star. So I could, and she was staying at her boyfriend's on 55th and 8th. So I basically had my own place
Wow.
half the time. So it was like a really great, and I had some money coming in. So it was like, oh my God, this was like, yes, but did I hang out every night? I segued from there to my own apartment on 77th and First, right around the corner from Catch a Rising Star. And I literally didn't leave the block for months on end. I would
Wow.
just go and I'd watch and I'd, pop into the comic strip. I'd go down to the Improv. Sometimes I'd walk there just to save cab or bus fare there. And it was like I paid lots of dues, hardly got on stage. I was very nervous, very nervous for a number of years. And I seemed to emote something from an audience, well, I would get laughs somewhat, but I would, if they heard a joke and they kind of felt for me, they could see I was so young, and they would take the jokes literally. Like um, I I I accidentally set the house on fire. My parents sent me to my room. Okay. And then you'd hear sometimes, you know, sometimes it was, like 2 in the morning, and you'd hear from a crowd of, five drunks. Ah, they would feel for me rather. I go, no, these are my jokes. These are my jokes. And it was crazy, but I had to, work my way through that. Um, but again, it was tough to get on stage, and that drove me to therapy and anxiety attacks and my first hug. So that was, yeah. When you talk about paying dues, I paid a lot of dues. You know, everybody did it for the love of it.
Right.
Like if you look at, Seinfeld was sitting next to me, and he's an old friend, and um, we didn't even know there were gigs back then. It was like we did it because we loved stand up. We didn't know where it was going to take us, or I guess we all wanted to be on the Tonight Show. The goal was to be on Carson, but it was it was because we loved it. There was nothing beyond, hey, I really love this art form, and I want to get better at it. And that's all it was about: getting better and learning. And I looked at the best people in New York, and how the laughs they got, and I said, well, that's the bar I need to surpass. And that's what I did. I think I did surpass it. I think I was the king of comedy in New York for a little while. I won the Laugh Off and Showtime, and
Whoa, 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 whoa. Let's not breeze past that. Come on, because I still have the videotape of that.
oh
Tell
yeah.
me more about that, sir, because that was
Well,
no easy feat.
I'll tell you the lesson. Yeah, no, it wasn't, because I was up against 90% of the comics in New York. But so what the deal was, Showtime had very successfully started this almost this comedy competition called the Big Laugh Off. And so I just started. I mean, literally, I just started December 16th of 76. And by October, end of October, I think it was, sometime in October of 1980, and within 3 to 4 years, I won this big competition, and that kind of launched me. I went from really not working to, headlining, which was a lot of stress too.
But
Okay, so we had everybody audition.
to,
I,
you
I
have to tell people who you beat in that competition.
number one guy that I beat that became the most famous was Eddie Murphy,
Oh,
who's who still to this day hates me for beating him. So I'm gladly gladly, if I can get under his skin, that'd be fine. But I also, good friends, Rick Overton he was on there, and Carol Leifer and Mark Schiff and Eddie Murphy, and I came in first. And Father Guido Sarducci was the host. The judges were Paul Dooley, who I became friendly with, Jackie Mason, who I became very friendly with, and Monteith and Rand, who
Wow.
they like sketch comedy. So they were the judges at the Copa. It was like an amazing, I mean, so many people there, friends and family that we all invited to this taping. And it was really an amazing experience. So it was
So tell me about, you have this incredible success, and it's not that things can happen overnight, because it doesn't, but in a way, because of that, like, you came from fifth place, man. I mean, Eddie Murphy came in fifth
yeah,
place.
yeah,
You,
yeah.
you scored. When did people start coming at you and saying, "Hey, Steven, you're good"?
Yeah, yeah. Well, once that got on the air, which was probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 months after that, I was like launched. I started getting, like I said, gigs. Is like it was unheard of. I mean, if I was lucky, we would do a place called Mustache Pete's, and I would be the opening act, and get $40 maybe, and it would say, okay, you can eat from the left side of the menu, which was like French fries and things. It's like once they said, oh, you can eat on the right side of the menu, I go, oh my God, it's like I can earn an entree. I got an entree. But yeah, no, that was very exciting, crazy exciting moment. And as a stand-up, before that, I had made some money as a writer. So I'm not going to say that I didn't make a living. Uh, I got some kind of living going as a writer. So that was good. I wrote for other comics. I wrote for Gabe Kaplan with my friend Billy Reback. We wrote an album for David Fry, the impressionist, who was famous back then, but he was a very sad alcoholic, never sold the album. But it brought me out to LA for months on end. Billy stayed in LA, and I went back to New York because I missed stand up too much. I got an offer to go immediately right into um, what's the famous improv in in Chicago?
It's not
The
Second City, no.
Yep, I was invited to join Second City. I turned that down. I was invited to things in LA, and I said no. I miss New York too much. I'm going back to New York and doing stand up. I was in New York till '85. So when you're on stage that much, and you're doing gigs, and you're growing as an artist and opening up for other talented musician. I was on tour with Sheena Easton. I did, Atlantic City, opening up for people many, many times. Aside from doing club gigs, now the clubs started expanding. We didn't know we were going to be in a renaissance of comedy, you know, and we just didn't know.
Yeah, but then you had me as your personal appearance agent. That
That's
should have told you something.
that's true. That's very true. And that was well, something. There was no shortage of gigs. Once you started making a living and you got a reputation, and you know, uh, I did Letterman, and I did a bunch of TV shows, and probably 100 TV shows stand up wise over the years. But that thing, the big laugh off, kicked me off into so much work and then other TV. And I did 50 commercials. So I was the guy that looked familiar between stand up and commercials and some movies and TV shows, sitcom stuff. People go, I know you. Either they know me by name, or I had that face that like, oh, I know you.
But Stephen,
So
you
yeah,
got that wide exposure on one of the great original variety shows.
I did Star Search, but I did the second version of Star Search. I didn't win it. No, I didn't win it. Well, I was in it to win it, but no, I didn't. I didn't win it. And no, I I'll tell you a story about that. So I only was on twice, but thank you for the thought. But I was on twice. The first time I beat um, Rosie O'Donnell, and
Wow.
she had thinned out all her material. She really won. I think she really won on personality. She was so likable and relatable to people. And but when I beat her, she actually backstage, she goes, "Thank you. I was so out of material. I just, I was thank you for beating me. I swear." And I liked her. She's funny. And the next time was against this guy Ken Ober. May he rest in peace. Great guy. But even everybody went, "Oh man, we had you pegged for going the distance on this." And the judges on that show, I forget who they were, but they were like, "Well, it was like he beat me by a notch." And it was like, "Oh, what are you going to do?" Once it's their taste, everybody's their own personal taste. Even Ken said, "I thought you beat me," so, but it is what it is. And uh, so,
Did you get more awareness, more recognized after that?
yeah, it didn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. I will tell you this about having the tough childhood. Back to that. Um, my parents, I don't know what it was. They were more supportive of my friends who were comedians than myself. When I didn't win on the second Star Search, which was a big deal. Um, it's kind of obvious. All you have to do is 2 minutes. 2 minutes. But okay, so I didn't win, and I was obviously disappointed. My parents never called. I don't know if they ever called on any of my shows. "Oh, we saw it, we loved it, good for you." None of that. Remember the no hugs. You know what I'm talking about. So after a week of my parents not calling, after I go, "God, I can't believe it. They can't say anything nice," and what craziness. So I called up I got my dad on the phone, and I said, "Dad," I said, it's like, this is, awful. I was probably disappointed. It would have been nice to get a consol consoling kind of consolatory, consolid, what's the word?
Close enough.
Yeah, a consoling kind of call, And he paused for a second. He goes, "Well, Mom didn't like the material."
Oh my God.
Because I did some jokes about her.
Ah!
But it was like, harmless. I mean, they'd seen me do those jokes anyway. It's not like and anyway, so that. It's too bad. But like they didn't know better. I don't know what. But so I think I told you the story last week when we were just catching up, and about I did Roxanne, with Steve Martin, the big hit film Roxanne, and I was like the sixth lead in the movie, and my parents, I called them up, the night before was the red carpet, and I was on Entertainment Tonight, and it was going to open up like the next day on that Friday, and I called my parents on that Thursday, and I said, "Hey, are you going to go see Roxanne this weekend? There's a big opening." And my dad says, "We're going to wait for it to come to the Dollar Theater."
Oh,
Oh my God! So that's my parents.
that's
That's
not even a joke, is it?
no joke. That that's what makes a comedian. You gotta. I think I think once in a while there are comedians that weren't, like you said, emotionally. They were emotionally nourished, but that wasn't my case. That wasn't my case.
Wow.
Yeah.
So okay. So we're at the point where you're starting to have some successes,
Yeah.
and someone who deals with self-esteem issues, someone who deals with lack of love, they accept success, perhaps differently than someone with, say, high self-esteem.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think I've been challenged by that, or still challenged by it, to put it mildly. I felt guilt is in 1 year, my earnings far surpassed anything my dad ever did. And I got to do it loving everything I did. Uh,
Ever, maybe ever, all the money he ever made.
Well, that's possibility actually. At least probably a few years or more, and wrap that up in 1 year of having a lot of fun. I mean, in 1 year, whatever you think of them now, it's up to the individual. But I got to work with Steve Martin and also Woody Allen. I did 9 days on radio days. So,
Wow.
a comedian, to work with those two, that back then especially, they were like, oh my God, the mega superstars of comedy. I got to work with both of them and get to know each of them, especially Steve, because that was about 8 to 9 weeks working with him. Um, and he also threw me into the Out of Towners, which wasn't the greatest movie, but he threw me in on a role in there. So that was nice of him. But yeah, I got to work with these, great people. But yeah, I definitely had issues with, I kind of suppressed my exploding in the business. I think I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know I felt guilty out earning my dad and things like that.
What would your friends have said as they watched you take some, listen, you took some giant steps. You were not a lightweight. Uh,
No, yeah.
you're one of the most liked and respected comedians because I hear your name brought up all the time.
Thank you.
What would your friends have said about you during those days?
Oh, they would have said I was a funny guy, and it's well earned, and you're going to make me cry here. But you asked me something before we went on the air, what my friends were like in my early years, and I was tying it into first inclinations about wanting to do stand up. I was shy. I didn't think I had a date till I was out of college. I was very shy, and so what I would do is I would think of something funny and I would whisper it into a friend's ear, and they would repeat it and they get a laugh. So I
Yeah.
knew, hey, I'm funny. It's like I was testing them out because I was so shy to. But once in a while I bump into this guy Craig Dermashkin, who's a lovely guy, and he's somebody I grew up with. And he says, I remember we were hanging out, and this was in Rochester Village. He said, we're hanging out near the fountain. There was a fountain in the middle of this kind of a project kind of place. It was like the projects, really. Like, anyway, like 20 buildings, and all these people would hang out at this fountain.
Oh yeah. Oh
And,
yeah.
and he goes, and man, you had a group of us rolling. You were so funny. And I don't remember at all being that open. It must have been a rare time that I was working the crowd of my friends. But I had other friends that literally, this guy Gino, hysterical, my friend Gary Charney, laughing, like my friend Rob Lipsky is maybe my closest, oldest friend, laughing like, pee in your pants laughter. And hopefully with Rob, we kind of achieved a mutual kind of love of comedy. And yeah, but I was still shy around in other circles. It
So
took me a while.
when did you start feeling a little less shy? I know that's a tough question because shy is shy,
Yeah.
and but I would think that there's a point, whether it's your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever it is, where you start feeling like, you know what, I'm leaving that crap behind. I feel pretty darn good about who and what I am.
I think it's almost like peeling away layers where you don't totally see it yourself. Um, I remember when I got married, uh, I, you know, my wife at the time, my newlywed wife, that second, literally, she read these heartfelt, amazing, beautiful vows about me and about our relationship. And then it was time for me, and I said, "Oh my God, I wrote the exact same thing," and I got a giant laugh, by 120 people at a wedding, and you got to be kind of an extrovert to do something like that, and so I can't tell you exactly when, but I think if you're on stage enough, uh, you kind of peeling away these layers, like I was saying. I mean, 10 years into comedy, I remember being on stage at the Comedy Store in the original room of the Comedy Store. And at that moment, I went, well, I feel like I'm myself now. It took me like 10 years till I felt like I was myself. So when I started, I said, I was nervous. You see me holding the mic there. I would hold the mic and literally my elbow would, like, this is a nervous tick, literally like that. And my head would
I remember that.
bounce up and down, and anyway, so and and I had all these quirks, I had these quirks, and as I got more stage time, they lessened and lessened and lessened, and when you start and you're 20 years old or 21 years old, you don't care what, as long as it's funny, you don't care, you'll say it. There's no rhyme or reason or character. There's very few people that have a character when they start. Fred Stoller, who I think would be a good interview for you, he had a character when he started, like nebbish, total nebbish. So my character, I had no character. All I had was this, whatever was funny, I would throw into my act. It would make the cut, you know? And so what happened was, after a couple of years of that, I was doing a gig with Mark Schiff, and I remember he goes, "You got to start talking about yourself." He said that. So and that launched. That was a big jump for me. It was mainly self-deprecating material, that kind of thing. And then give me another year or two, and another friend of ours, Tom Stern, who's a brilliant comic mind, he goes, "Be the loser, but act like a winner."
Wow.
And it's a real tweak. Like, meaning before, the loser was, "I know what you're thinking. Why did this guy go into comedy? I used to be a male model. I modeled socks on the radio. You recognize me? You know who I feel sorry for? My twin sister. She's a male model. She modeled socks on the radio." So I went from that, and a lot of success with that. And then all of a sudden he said, do it like a winner. Like, he gave me a directorial note. And it was like, all of a sudden it was like, "I know what you're thinking. Why did this guy go into comedy?" See that tweak? I went from acting like the total loser to acting like a winner but really underneath, I feel sorry for my twin sister. She's a male model. She models socks on the radio. It's like bragging. You know what I mean? I'll tell you something with this character. And I used to have this introduction, and the introduction was, "Ladies, sit back if you can." The Nevish character. "Ladies, sit back if you can. Gentlemen, hold on to your dates. This guy's got all the right hormones in all the right places." Okay, that was the intro. And I'd walk on stage and I'd get giant laughs without saying one word. And then I was indignant, like, "How dare you laugh at me?" You know what I mean? Like, right? So I give this guy an introduction. I'm working, I don't know, Columbus, Ohio, or someplace like that. And I said, "Here's the intro. You're going to set me up with this character that I do." And you go, "I know what you're thinking, right?" I say, listen, Gentlemen, hold on to your dates. Ladies, sit back if you can, because this guy's got all the right hormones in all the right places. And he goes, got it. It's great. I got it. This is going to be a lot of fun. Got it. Got it. So he introduces me and he goes, ladies, sit back if you can. Gentlemen, hold on to your dates because this guy's got all the right corpuscles in all the right places. And I come on stage and I'm thinking in my head, what an idiot. And I went on stage and I'm nothing. It's like, no, the setup is all gone. And, and I still had to just fake it and go into my regularly set material. But yeah, anyway, so that one moment, corpuscles, I don't know what he was, either he was screwing me up on purpose. I don't think so. I think he just screwed up. Hormones, like it tells you every word matters, as you know, Bruce, every word matters.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's
Yeah.
the success. I remember Provenza, who you said stood on that line with you
Yeah.
In the late 70s. I remember him saying that it took him like 10 years to feel really comfortable and really good about himself.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
he would get up there and go, darn, I've lost it. So, stand up is really that way.
Yep, yep. I'll tell you, everybody, I just read Mark Schiff and I used to write each other in that first fall of 76 when I left, we became friends and, I left, the city and went back to University of Buffalo. And he would write me about the comedy scene. We'd write, every 3-4 weeks or whatever, how people wrote letters back then. Letters? What is letters? Anyway, and Provenza and I would write each other letters. And it was like, man, I miss stand up because he was at Penn. He went to Penn.
Yes, right.
And I went to UB. So we're all writing each other, and it was like, oh my God, when can I get back to doing? It was like an addiction, getting laughs, and just starting to taste what this felt like, And back then, you could, like, I was lucky. I had that $150 a month for 8 months, and then I got writing work. And it was amazing that I got to survive like for a couple of years, but there was still a lot of struggle. But an apartment in the city was like $225, and you'd eat every meal in the clubs,
Oh,
at least at night.
you could get by, you could get by.
I can't imagine what it would be like now if somebody was going to the city. I did temp jobs. I worked for a million different little office gigs and things too to survive. And one time, talking about the struggling years, I literally stayed when I had no apartment anymore. I stayed at, like 8 or 9 comics at their homes while they were on the road. I would bounce from one thing to another to another. I rented a room. This guy, Ron Richards, he had his parents' house. They had moved somewhere, but he had their house in New Jersey, in North Jersey, and Passaic. And for $40, Rich Hall, who was on SNL, and we both rented rooms for $40 each, and we would drive into together to the city. We'd all try and do sets, and we'd drive back, and we go to the Jersey diners and go over our jokes and our notes, and what do you think of this? What do you think of this? But that was like 4 months, 5 months of just doing that, then renting a room in an apartment. This woman on the Upper West Side, she rented apartments, rooms in her apartment, 83rd and West End. It was a great location on the Upper West Side. And I did like 3-4 years of that. And then 3 years of my own place, like about 12, 13 blocks away from that. So, it was like crazy, everything worked. It all worked together, but it's like building a muscle. You do things you don't think you could do, and you stretch yourself, and you're peeling away these layers, and challenges matter. Winning the laugh off, I didn't make the cut, right? I wasn't even supposed to be on the laugh off, but I ended up getting to able to re-audition because I just showed up, but either somebody didn't show up
Wow.
and I got to audition again, and then all of a sudden I end up winning the thing.
Wow.
Same thing with if I had any life lesson as somebody going into show business, I'd say, just show up anyway. Like they say 80, 90% of life is just showing up. And like when I got a Roxanne, I mean, everybody auditioned. They had like a whole night at the Comedy Store, like 20 people auditioned. I couldn't get an audition for some reason. And that night, Gary Shandling, may he rest in peace, Gary didn't show up. He had a set. Like after the auditions, they would just went back to their regular comic lineup, right? And he didn't show up, but I showed up in case somebody fell out. And
Wow.
he fell out, and they saw me. I'm the only one they chose from that night.
Wow. Wow.
So it was like, just show up. Just show up is just part of it. Is just show
What
up.
a great lesson. I know that this show is going to be very meaningful, not just for people that loved what we did in the 80s, but this younger generation is going to learn invaluable lessons just like that they couldn't learn anyplace else, would never hear anyplace else.
You got to show up. You got to try. You got stage time. Show up. Try material. Uh, you know, love the process. You're going to be in a process. Like anything else in life, you just got to love the process.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So, Steve, I can go on with you all night long. You're spectacular. We haven't even touched the surface, and we're not done yet. So don't get too relaxed now. But let's throw out this last year because I don't even want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Tell me about your last 3, 4, 5 years,
Yeah.
and then we can talk about what you see in the future for yourself.
Well, honestly, in the last year, just to say, I did about a dozen, 13, 14 gigs, but all on Zoom, just like we're talking now. And I kind of learned how to work that Zoom magic. So that's an interesting thing. The one of the gigs, and I'll get back to the previous few years. One of the gigs I did was on something called Remo, R-E-M-O. It's like Zoom, but okay. And I'll just tell the story. I got a gig. It's a corporate gig, and the guy on a Friday says, "Call Sherry on Monday. She's going to cut you the check for the gig." And I call Sherry up, and I see her email address is New York City Lady 55 at gmail.com. And I tell her, I said, "Hey, I also grew up in New York, and I'm born in 55, and we just connected. We connected." And she goes, "Well, what's your address? I want to send you your check." And I said, "Well, I'm in Indio, California." And she goes, "I'm in Indio, California. I'm in India." And I'm like, out of the whole country, she's in Indio and I'm in Indio. And she goes, "Well, what's your address?" I go, "Well, no. Tell me your address. I'm going to put it into my Waze, my Waze, GPS." And she gives me her address. She's literally 3 blocks away.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I actually walked over. So now later that day, after our conversation, at 5 o'clock, they were doing a run through of this Remo, like Zoom, but Remo. Okay. And in Remo, you hit a button that says presenter, right? Just presenter. And once you hit presenter, you can't see everybody. Like I couldn't see you. If there were you and 10 other people and I hit a button, you would disappear. I couldn't see you. I couldn't hear you, which is not the best recipe for comedy when you can't see your audience or hear your audience. And so I try to talk them out of it. And they go, no. One of our big shots, it was his idea. We can't say no to this. And Sherry goes, "Well, just look at the chat. Just look at the chat, right?" And I start, she says, we'll put ha if we like it, or ha ha if we really like it, or ha 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 if we love it. So literally. So back to this, while we're doing the tech run through on Remo, uh, she and I are talking. Where did you grow up? Where'd you grow up? I said, well, I grew up in Queens. Oh yeah, me too. And I grew up in Glen Oaks, and then we moved. I know Glen Oaks, or I then moved to Rochdale Village. And she goes, well, where'd you go to high school? I go, Springfield Gardens. She goes, I went to Springfield Gardens High School. We went. She lives 3 blocks away. I went to pick up my check from her, and I signed the yearbook. We're both in the same year,
Wow.
graduating class. Crazy. So now that, and the show went really well, but it was funny. All I read was the chat. Ha, 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 ha,
LOL, LOL.
LOL, LOL. It's crazy. It's the life of comedy, comic. So the 3 or 4 years before, basically, I did corporate gigs. I did travel the country. I'll do somebody's, 70th birthday. I'll do somebody's retirement, what I mean, from a Fortune 500 company. I've done the funeral business, seriously, not a funeral, but, a funeral business, a California funeral organization, whatever. I've done, endless doctors, lawyers, architects, engineers, high tech, IT, endless amounts. And then in the last 10 years, I became a damn good auctioneer. That's me auctioneering behind us. That's the picture. And so that's what I did. I developed these skills, and then I realized I was a good host. And by the way, with auctions, there's some of them there's such heavy childhood cancer, right? So you could be doing, you could have a very dry personality, host that, and do the auction, or you can add a comedian who's going to lighten up a remarkably heavy subject matter. So people started hiring me to do, pretty heavy auctions, weird diseases you've never heard of, a lot of schools have auctions, colleges, anything, any kind of, uh, kindergarten, it's like first step nursery school. Anybody wants to have an auctioneer, and you work out a deal, and you say, I'll host and I'll do stand up too, and or you just do the auction, and
How do they find you, Stephen?
they find I advertise myself online. That's how I do it. It's word of mouth also. And also, the most flattering thing is I've been rehired. There's somebody that's hired me 5 times. So this woman in New Jersey, um, uh, Susan Steinfeld, not Seinfeld, but Steinfeld. She's hired me 5 times. A 6th time coming up, actually in September. I'm doing something in New Jersey for her. I get people, there's a corporate gigs I've done 3 times, 4 times. If they like you, they want you back, if not every year, every other year.
So how can they find you? Because if you want people to get in touch with you after
Well,
seeing this show, how can they do it?
honestly, you can just go right to my email address. Just say, give you my email. I don't mind. Steve Mittleman, Mittleman, 114 @gmail.com. That's it. Steve Mittleman. That's the best way to find me. Just direct. Somebody actually contacted me today about an auction through Messenger on Facebook. So you can get to me through Facebook, get to me through my email address. That's direct. And I have a manager, and something like that. He doesn't really deal with that kind of stuff unless I really need him. It's a high-end thing and needs to negotiate or, give me advice, that kind of thing.
Sure.
Uh,
I hope if you ever come down to not even South Florida, if you ever get to Florida, I'd get in my car and see you perform,
Thank you.
spend
Thank you.
time with you. I mean, I
It's
see you
fun.
perform, and
Yeah, thank you. One of the great things about stand-up, I'm so blessed with meeting friends like you and like the Susan Steinfeld and Jeff Penn, who we were talking about. These are, longtime friendships. It's an amazing. I've met so many. Again, I could cry about it. So many people that I care for, that I know care about me. It's an amazing thing. An amazing.
A hug coming your way, man.
Hey, thank you. But it really is true. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of people that have these experiences. I've met so many amazing people along my journey, not fellow people with talented that I really have great respect for, other comics and actors and I didn't even talk about that, but I talked a little about it. But I made a living as an actor too, so it was really great. So I've had a lot of diverse career paths.
Well, Jeff Penn and I are going to do whatever we can, and it should be pretty easy stuff because the country's ready to laugh again.
Oh
We're
my
going
God.
to get you out on the road with your best buddies,
Yeah,
and I think it's going to be a blast. I can't wait to
yeah,
start doing that and getting you booked across the country.
yeah. I hope so. I look forward. Now, the other thing I was going to mention is I see right behind me, 80s golden age of comedy. I I will have to say that I'm probably the rare guy. Literally from 80 to 85, I was in New York, right? And actually on a great rise. And then I moved to LA in 85. So if you talk to complete 80s, I had an experience of New York and LA
Both.
and the country. While that decade was a big change for me. But I was so established in New York that it made establishing myself in LA a lot easier.
Yeah. I remember seeing you. I remember hanging with you out at the improv, and because
Yeah,
that's
a lot of that.
we talked about Smirnoff and Mark Goldstein
Yeah, Mark. Yeah.
and Billy Reback and Barry Martyr, and that was my gang. And then of course we sat with everybody else when they came on and came off. It was a
Did
really
you
wonderful time.
even did you know Irving Simons, who's yeah, you know
No,
him?
I did not.
He's a friend of Smirnoff's, old friend. Oh, I think they were roommates at one time too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So listen, my friend, I know we'll be talking very soon.
Yes. I can't wait to see
We
you.
already chatted all about what we're going to be doing, and don't want
Yes.
to go into that. But I want to thank you so much for doing the show.
Oh,
You're
well,
priceless, man. You're
thank you.
like I said. It's one thing to be have people laugh at you. It's another thing to have the total respect and admiration of other comedians, and that you have.
Well, I'm just I'm damn lucky. I'm damn lucky. There's a great thank you, and there's a great camaraderie among the comedians, especially that generation that you're talking about, that 80s, that really zoomed in the 80s.
And that's what makes it the golden age. Yes, the comedy clubs took off, but everybody was struggling in the late 70s to make it, and they all honed their talents. And by the time Evening at the Improv kicked in, and the Showtime shows and the HBO shows, we were ready. Everybody was ready. But the camaraderie was really what made that golden age golden.
Very special. It's like, yeah, and it very much is like a sitcom. Like, let's hang out in the club, and there's going to be something going on every day, something new, something different. Some guest was going to be in. It was like us being in a sitcom in a way.
Exactly right. Thank you, everybody. Mr. Steve Mittleman.
Thank you.
Again,
Thank you very much.
Yahoo!
Thank you.
Thank you for being on the show. And everybody, thank you for watching the 80s Golden Age of Comedy. Please visit the 80s Golden Age of Comedy.com site to see all the interviews that we've done. You'll start binging and it'll be tough to stop watching. Bye, everybody. We'll see you again. Take care.
Thank you, Bruce.
right, Stephen. Great
Good. That's
show.
good. Thank you. I don't think I was that particularly funny, but I was more, entering, on the serious side, but it was fun.
You know what? It had a bit of that like Lenny
Serious.
Bruce kind of thing where Lenny just, listen, he had a heavy side, and
Spoke his mind. He spoke his mind. Yeah.
yeah,
It's all, I think that's fine. I think people, yeah, I think maybe they're coming here to hear about the deeper, it's kind of answering what you asked me. It's kind of dig into the deeper side of us, you know?
that's right. That's the gold for me. Is
Yeah.
everybody says to me, did you get to know everybody? Well, I only got to know what they wanted to show me as their agent.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know that,
Yeah.
and that's how terrific they are, how funny they are. But
Yeah.
no, I didn't know anything about anybody back then.
Interesting. Well, people were less formed in a way. They were, I think everybody had, almost everybody had this tunnel vision about, I want to get better. I want to work, and it was about, that was it. I want to establish myself. I want to make a living. I want to pay the bills. So we were less, unless it was your very small circle of friends, you didn't know exactly the deepest stuff about people, you know, especially people where you were just hanging out with so casually at the clubs. I don't think.
Yeah, and you guys did not have. I mean, you guys did not have the kinds of people to admire where they were working. Just a few of them were working and making money. It
Yeah,
wasn't, the majority. So you guys were truly, really pioneers.
yeah. That was pretty. It was pretty wild when Billy and I were writing for Gabe Kaplan. That was like less than a year into doing stand up, and we were in Vegas writing for him,
Wow.
and then in LA, and to see that he was like a superstar. He was the star, at least a co-star with John Travolta of Welcome Back, Kotter. The way he was treated, you just can't believe.
Oh, it was a top show, man. There was nothing bigger than Cotter.
Yeah. He was literally, he would literally fly back and forth every day to write on the show and do the show.
Wow.
Yeah.